I might as well start with I'm Josh Payne.
My name is Jonathan Penchoff, and I'm going to tell my side of the polar bear gorilla story as I remember it.
This is a story about how I'm better than Jonathan Penchoff.
The trip consisted of me, George Perm, Nathan Evans, and Josh Payne.
We decided, a group of us, to go to Australia and do some tattooing for a month, give or take 7-8 years ago now. And while we were over there, we're having a good time, but you're stuck in a car for way too goddamn long.
All the way down to Melbourne, and then from Melbourne to the Gold Coast, and then back down to Sydney from there. I don't know if you're aware how much driving that really is, but it's a lot and it was awful. The four of us smashed into one tiny rental car.
And in the middle of all of this stuff, you're sitting there, you're trying to figure out things to talk about, you're going back and forth.
All of us have pretty interesting personalities, and they're all pretty, I don't want to say aggressive, some of them are, but they all stand out on their own.
I need to get a little more drunk first.
So putting us all into a car together, and airplanes and tattoo shops and hotels and hostels and people's living rooms for a month was a pretty tall feat.
Basically, while we're riding around, who the hell knows where we're at in Australia, because we were bouncing from city to city, and there was times we were in the car for like 10, 12 hours together.
At some point, relatively early in this trip, we're all hanging out and spending time in the car, and Josh Payne, being Josh Payne, says, "Hey, what's your favorite animal?"
Let's get into fights. Let's see how this plays out.
And I say, a polar bear. And without any sort of hesitation, he says, "Mine's a silverback gorilla. A silverback gorilla could beat a polar bear in a fight."
I brought up the idea of who would win in a fight between a silverback gorilla and a polar bear.
I was so dumbfounded that this became a competition about our favorite animals.
And the clear-cut answer is a silverback, and Jonathan's on the other side, just trying to fight me tooth and nail on this one. I'm like, there's no fucking way.
We keep driving, we're hanging out, and we have the full debate. I'm explaining to him that a silverback gorilla is an herbivore and a polar bear is an apex predator.
Agility, mobility, just straight up badass.
Also, there's no way to ever tell this, right? So we're kind of going back and forth about all this. We get George's opinion, we get Nathan's opinion. It's this whole ordeal.
Really, I guess at the end of the day, I'm pretty much way too competitive of an asshole, and I just kept it going and kept it going and kept it going.
One of the first questions I remember Josh asking all the local artists that we're hanging out with is he goes, "Hey, who do you think would win in a fight between a polar bear and a gorilla?" I was so confident that a polar bear would win. But then when Josh starts actually fielding questions with people, asking them if they think a polar bear would win or a gorilla would win, every single person, without fail, said the gorilla.
And I finally actually got to a point where I think I had him pretty well convinced it was going to be the silverback.
I'm like, maybe I'm wrong. I don't feel like I am. I feel like I have logic behind me, and there's nothing there for Josh.
I think we're nearing the end of it. We're back in Sydney.
And while we're there, we're staying with this dude, and he's like a big animal lover, and we're asking him, and he's like, "Oh, I don't know. I think that maybe the gorilla would win." And at this point, I'm really starting to be like, fuck. Everyone thinks this, like, I have to be wrong.
And one of the four of us, was it Perm maybe?
One of us were tattooing someone who worked with the giraffes at the Taronga Zoo.
At the Topanga Zoo? Topanga something? The Steve Irwin Zoo. That's what I've told people forever. It's the fucking Steve Irwin Zoo.
And he says, "Oh, when you guys have your next day off, if you want to go to the zoo, I can hook it up. You guys can meet some animals and do all that shit."
And we didn't realize how much of a behind the scenes experience we were going to get. I mean, it was awesome.
It's amazing. We get to feed giraffes. I fed a giraffe out of my mouth, which was really weird.
I had giraffes eating carrots off the top of my head.
They were passing us off. Like, the giraffe guy showed us the giraffes, and then he was like, "Let me introduce you to Sydney. Sydney's gonna show you these."
We were like holding weird marsupials.
Finally, it got to the situation where the guy goes, "Okay, now we're gonna go to the primate house."
And we have like a primate specialist. And I really want to drive home the fact that a silverback gorilla would just fuck up a polar bear. And again, remember, I have them now convinced, and there's no reason for me to push this point farther, other than just to be a dickhead.
So I was like, yeah, fuck, man, maybe a gorilla could, I don't know. I'm not a primate expert. However, at this point of the trip, we are with a primate expert.
So I present the question, and I'm like, who do you think would win in a fight between a silverback gorilla and a polar bear?
This motherfucker. And the woman who is running the primate house, without even any consideration, scoffs and says,
A polar bear would fuck up a gorilla like you were fighting like a 3-year-old.
and this is the first person in the entire trip who has mentioned that a polar bear would win.
And then I'm crushed.
And I go, could you tell me why? And she says, yeah, because a polar bear is a predator and it hunts. A gorilla is an herbivore and it's not a hunting animal.
Then I'm pitching options like, what if he catches him with the right hook?
Well, who's teaching this fucking gorilla how to punch? It's not a boxing gorilla.
What if he goes this way? And she goes, there's no fight in this thing at all.
But Payne is like just looking for any way that it would be possible. And it was amazing because the whole time the primate woman was just like, not a chance. It's just not possible.
I'd won. I convinced him. I should have just let it die, but nope.
Watching Josh Payne's face just drop because he actually finally had a credible source tell him that he was wrong was one of the most beautiful moments in my life.
It's one of those things I've had to live with and deal with for 8 years now, that I was just that cocky and competitive of an asshole that I had to bring it back up.
This story became one of those stories that was told over and over because it perfectly exemplifies how Payne can make something competitive. And it's usually always in good fun because Payne's like a happy, nice person. This is why he was on Ink Master and why he won it, because he's a competitive person and he can get under people's skin. He almost had me convinced that the things that I knew to be true were not true.
One of the things I think is the funniest here is that I'm pretty sure Penchoff asked me to retell this story assuming it was going to be a completely different fable. But I am absolutely willing to admit that I was a cocky, arrogant dickhead, and I pushed a point to where I was just proven completely wrong. And I have to live with the fact that I was so certain of my answer that I just kept pushing it and pushing it and pushing it until I was just completely dismissed of all of my thoughts. And that's what sucks.